Ladies and gentlemen, today we dive into the incredible and heartbreaking story of Bobby Alison, one of NASCAR's greatest legends. A man whose life was defined by speed, skill, and a love for racing that pushed him to greatness. But behind the checkered flags and roaring crowds, Alison's journey was also marked by devastating losses, tragedies that would test the limits of his resilience. This is the story of Bobby Alison, a man who won big, lost bigger, and still left behind a legacy that changed NASCAR forever. A champion on the track. Born on December 3, 1937, in Miami, Florida, Robert Arthur Allison grew up with racing in his blood. He started as a mechanic but quickly realized that his true calling was behind the wheel. By the 1960s, Bobby had made a name for himself on the short tracks of the Southeast, eventually forming the legendary Alabama gang alongside Red Farmer and his younger brother, Donnie Allison. Bobby's career took off in the 1970s and 80s, where he became one of NASCAR's fiercest competitors. He was known for his aggressive driving, relentless determination, and an undying hunger for victory. His rivalry with Darrell Waltrip and Cale Yarborough became the stuff of legend, making for some of the most thrilling battles in NASCAR history. With 84 official career wins, Bobby Alison cemented himself as one of the all-time greats. But no victory meant more to him than his 1983 NASCAR Cup Series championship, a title that had eluded him for years. Then came 1988, a year that should have been his greatest. It started with a dream victory. But what followed would change his life forever. A life-altering crash. The 1988 Daytona 500 was a special race for Bobby Alison. At 50 years old, many believed his best days were behind him. But he proved everyone wrong. Not only did he take the checkered flag, but his son, Davey Allison, finished second, creating one of the most emotional father-son moments in NASCAR history. Bobby was on top of the world. But just a few months later, on June 19, 1988, disaster struck. During the Pocono 500, Allison's car suffered a catastrophic blowout at over 200 miles per hour, sending him into a violent crash. His car was shredded on impact, and Bobby suffered a life-threatening head injury. Doctors weren't sure if he would survive. He was in a coma for weeks. When he woke up, he had no memory of his career. He didn't even remember winning the Daytona 500 just months earlier. The accident ended his racing career overnight. The man who had built his life around speed suddenly had to learn to walk and talk again. For Bobby, the hardest part wasn't the end of racing, it was the feeling of losing himself. The tragic losses of his sons. Bobby Alison had lost his career, but the pain was just beginning. On July 13, 1992, his world shattered when his son Clifford Allison died in a crash during practice for a Busch Series race in Michigan. He was only 27 years old. Clifford had followed in his father's footsteps, dreaming of making it big in NASCAR. But that dream ended in an instant. The loss devastated Bobby, but he still had Davey, the son who had stood beside him at Daytona just years earlier. Davey had become a superstar, carrying on the Allison name as one of NASCAR's most promising talents. But then, in 1993, tragedy struck again. On July 12, 1993, almost exactly 1 year after Clifford's death, Davey was involved in a helicopter crash while trying to land at Talladega Superspeedway. He suffered severe head injuries and passed away the next day. He was just 32 years old. Bobby Alison had lost both of his sons in less than a year. The pain was indescribable. The man who had once been on top of the racing world was now facing a nightmare no parent should ever endure. Resilience and legacy. Most people would have crumbled under that kind of grief. But Bobby Alison wasn't most people. Despite the overwhelming losses, he remained connected to the racing world. He mentored young drivers, made appearances at NASCAR events, and even became a vocal advocate for safety improvements in racing. His accident at Pocono had sparked discussions about head injuries in motorsports. In the years that followed, NASCAR made significant changes, including better helmet restraints and improvements in car design to reduce the risk of head trauma, measures that have saved countless lives. Even after losing Davy and Clifford, Bobby continued to honor their memory, supporting the next generation of racers and ensuring that the Allison name would never be forgotten. The lasting impact on NASCAR. Bobby Allison's legacy isn't just about wins, it's about changing the sport for the better. The co-founder of the Alabama gang, Bobby's influence helped put Southern short track racing on the map, inspiring future generations of racers. A safety advocate, his crash led to discussions about driver safety, pushing NASCAR toward critical improvements. A symbol of resilience, no one in the history of the sport has endured the kind of personal losses that Bobby Alison has. And yet, he never turned away from NASCAR. In 1998, NASCAR named him one of its 50 greatest drivers, a well-deserved honor for a man who gave his heart and soul to the sport. And in 2011, he was inducted into the NASCAR Hall of Fame, forever solidifying his place among the legends of racing. Bobby Alison, a legacy beyond the tragedy. As we continue exploring Bobby Allison's extraordinary journey, it becomes clear that his story is not just about racing, it's about resilience, heartbreak, and the unwavering spirit of a man who refused to be defeated by life's cruelest turns. Let's take a closer look at the deeper impact Bobby had on the sport of NASCAR, the personal struggles he faced in his later years, and how his legacy continues to shape the sport today. The NASCAR Safety Revolution, how Bobby's tragedy changed racing. Bobby Allison's devastating crash at Pocono in 1988 nearly killed him, and it exposed serious safety issues in NASCAR. His car's blowout at over 200 miles per hour led to discussions about the dangers of racing on high-speed superspeedways without the necessary protections for drivers. As a result of crashes like Bobby's, and the later deaths of his sons Clifford and Davy, NASCAR implemented a series of crucial safety changes, including white heavy checkmark, improved helmets and restraints. Bobby's accident highlighted the need for better protection against head injuries, leading to advancements in helmet technology and the head and neck support (HANS) device, which would later become mandatory. White heavy checkmark car reinforcements. After seeing how Bobby's car was shredded on impact, NASCAR worked to strengthen car frames, ensuring they could withstand violent crashes. White heavy checkmark safer barriers. The walls at many tracks were modified to absorb impact and reduce deadly forces. This development would prove life-saving in future crashes, including Dale Earnhardt's fatal accident at Daytona in 2001. Bobby Alison may not have been able to race again, but his accident sparked changes that have saved countless lives. Even in tragedy, his legacy was shaping the future of the sport. Life after racing, the challenges of starting over. Losing his racing career at just 50 years old was a devastating blow for Bobby. Racing had been his identity, his passion, and his livelihood. But after the accident, he struggled with basic memory functions and had to relearn daily life. For a time, Bobby faced financial hardships. He had earned millions throughout his career, but without the ability to race or manage his business deals, he found himself in a tough spot. Medical expenses, lost income, and personal struggles made his post-racing years difficult. But Bobby, as always, found a way to push forward. He made peace with his rival Darrell Waltrip, with whom he had one of the most intense rivalries in NASCAR history. Their famous battles in the 1970s and 80s had been bitter, but in later years, Waltrip expressed deep respect for Bobby, and the two men reconciled. He stayed involved in racing, appearing at NASCAR events and working with younger drivers. He focused on honoring his sons, ensuring that Davy and Clifford's memories lived on through charitable foundations and tributes. Despite all the pain, Bobby Alison never turned his back on the sport he loved. Honoring Davy and Clifford, keeping their memories alive. Losing both sons in back-to-back years could have easily broken Bobby. Instead, he made it his mission to preserve their legacy. Checkered flag. Davy Allison's tribute. Davy was inducted into the International Motorsports Hall of Fame in 1998, just 5 years after his tragic death. Bobby was there, standing proudly as his son was honored among the greats. Checkered flag. Clifford Allison's memory. While Clifford's career was cut short before he could achieve NASCAR greatness, Bobby made sure that his name was never forgotten, speaking about him in interviews and sharing the hopes and dreams Clifford had as a young racer. Checkered flag: the Allison legacy lives on, even though Davy and Clifford are gone, their memory is honored by racing fans worldwide. NASCAR still pays tribute to the Allison family, and Bobby remains one of the most beloved figures in the sport. His story is proof that even in loss, love never dies. The NASCAR Hall of Fame, a long-awaited honor. In 2011, Bobby Alison received the honor he had long deserved, induction into the NASCAR Hall of Fame. Fans, fellow racers, and NASCAR legends gathered to celebrate the man who had given so much to the sport. But Bobby, always humble, dedicated the moment to his sons. "I wish Davy and Clifford were here to see this," he said. It was an emotional moment, not just for Bobby, but for everyone who had followed his incredible journey. He had fought for every victory, endured unspeakable tragedy, and still stood strong. And that's what makes Bobby Alison a true legend. Final thoughts: the unbreakable spirit of Bobby Alison. Bobby Alison's story is more than just a racing tale. It's a story of triumph and heartbreak, of victories and losses, of a man who never backed down, not on the track, not in life, and not even in the face of unimaginable pain. Through his career, his influence, and his tragedies, Bobby has left a permanent mark on NASCAR. Checkered flag: his rivalries and wins made the sport more exciting. Checkered flag: his accident and losses led to critical safety changes. Checkered flag: his resilience and dedication inspired generations of racers. Today, when NASCAR fans look back at history, Bobby Alison stands tall, not just as a driver, but as a symbol of strength, perseverance, and the undying love for racing. So the next time you watch a NASCAR race, remember Bobby Alison. Remember his victories, his struggles, and his legacy. Because he's not just a part of NASCAR history, he's a part of NASCAR's very soul. Thank you, Bobby. You are, and always will be, a legend.